is Sergii Baidachnyi, and I'm a principal developer evangelist at Microsoft Canada. And today I am going to talk about Microsoft Azure. Today I am going to talk about different services, how you can use these services in DevOps, and which DevOps features we have in Microsoft Azure. And usually I start my presentations with a couple marketing slides. But last week, probably on Tuesday, I got very excited news. So today I am going to start with a demo. It does not relate to DevOps, but it's very cool demo. I will show. So first of all, I am going to open Microsoft Azure portal, and I am going to create a new object there. Using Microsoft Azure portal, you can use it from anywhere, even using your Android phones, etc. I can create something like a website. The most popular entries there, websites, mobile applications, etc. So I am going to create a simple web application, and probably later I will be able to upload my code there, etc. So on the first step, I have to provide name, I have to provide information about resource group, and I have to select a plan. So let's try to create a plan, and you can see that in this case you have to provide a name and you have to select a pricing time. But the most important thing is exactly that I'm going to present now. I hope you can see it. Canada. Last week we announced public availability for 2 data centers in Canada. One we built in Toronto and one more in Montreal. So I don't have any special permissions here. So I'm using just usual Microsoft Azure panel, and I have the same trial account that you can use directly from azure.com website. So you can create your websites, virtual machines, anything in Canadian data centers now. Finally, I can start with my marketing slides. When I talk about Azure probably 5 years ago, usually I talked about 4 or 5 different services, because at that time we introduced virtual machines, we introduced some background services like different storages, and we introduced just ASP.NET hosting at that time. So it was not very funny, and at that time I did not have a chance to tell anything about DevOps and about any specific DevOps services. But today, if we are talking about Azure, we can talk not just about virtual machines, we can talk not just about platform as a service, we can talk about not just about infrastructure as a service, we can talk about platform as a service, and we can talk about software as a service. So today we have a huge number of different services, and I have a very scary slide with some services there, and you can see that we have about 50 different services. So today you can start working not just virtual machines. You can deploy your website in a couple of clicks. You can deploy Hadoop database. You can use not Amazon Lambda, we have functions. We announced it a couple of weeks ago. You can use anything. But if we are talking about DevOps, probably it's better to talk about 2 things. First one, we can talk about services that you can use in DevOps, that you can use in order to set up your software development lifecycle, that you can use in order to test your applications, in order to create different reports, etc., etc. And probably we can talk about DevOps features for some particular services. So I will start with features. I will try to show something simple, and a little bit later I am going to talk about DevOps specific services as well. So let's start with DevOps features, and I am going to show just several basic services. Probably the most popular services there are web applications, mobile applications, workflows, API applications. So it's the most popular things, and using these services, you can easily deploy a website, you can easily deploy business logic for your mobile application, you can easily deploy different workflows, and in case of Azure application services, you can use lots of different technologies. First of all, you should not have any knowledge in IT pro stuff, IT professional stuff. You should not have any knowledge in Active Directory. I am a developer, yeah, I don't know what is it, how to set up an Active Directory. You should not have knowledge in operating system at all. So in case of application services, you can simply use management panel, for example, in order to create your website. You can select your plan, how many servers you are going to use for your website. You can schedule some things that will scale out, scale in your services automatically. And in general, you can use almost any modern technology in order to build your code. You can use not just .NET, you can use Node.js, you can use Java, you can use PHP, and many other languages. And what is more important, for all these technologies, we provide not just infrastructure, we provide lots of different SDKs, and we provide lots of different libraries and open source projects that you can use in your software, and you can concentrate just on your code or just on your business logic there. But if we are talking about these services, probably it's better to show several DevOps features that these services have inside. So at least two things. Probably it's better to talk about continuous deployment, and it's better to talk about different slots. I am going to start with continuous deployment. So if we are talking about continuous deployment and continuous integration, usually developers work with different source controls. The most popular services today, GitHub, Visual Studio, Team services, or you can store your code anywhere. You can deploy even your own local Git storage, etc. So in case of continuous integration, I thought that web services allows you to deploy your code very quickly and allows you to use existing infrastructure and enable some features like Java, PHP, Python, etc. But okay, we have some features for developers. Why we cannot implement some additional modules, some additional components that will help you to integrate your web application with some source control systems, for example, with GitHub, with Git, with Visual Studio Team Service. And today, if you create any application service, you can easily use continuous integration feature based on different storages there. So as I mentioned earlier, you can use Visual Studio Team Service, you can use GitHub, you can even grab code from Dropbox, I don't know why, and and OneDrive also, yeah. But it's not important. Yeah, you have a chance to select, and you have lots of different components there. So probably we added everything there. So how to start working with continuous integration? Probably it's better to show a demo. I will start with a simple website. So let's try to create a web application using Microsoft Azure management panel. We have a new management panel there that are based on HTML5 and that are adopted for different screen sizes. So using management panel, you can easily create basic services there, like web applications, virtual machines, different storages, etc. But in some cases, you want to create something ready to use. For example, a virtual machine with SQL Server inside, a virtual machine based on a specific operating system. We support not just Windows operating system, but Linux, different Linux operating system versions. In this case, you have access to marketplace as well. So you have lots of components by default inside our management panel. But if you click a link CO, you will be able to get access to Azure Marketplace. There you can find lots of different components, in most cases for free. So for example, several months ago, my daughter asked me to deploy a Minecraft server. You know that Minecraft server use Linux. I never deployed Linux, have never deployed Linux, and I'm not sure if I know what is Minecraft, frankly speaking. I know Microsoft bought Minecraft, but my favorite tool is Visual Studio. Sorry guys. That's why I tried to visit Marketplace. I typed something like Minecraft server, and it's strange, but there is a virtual machine ready to use Minecraft server. So I simply click a couple buttons and I have a Minecraft server. In our case, we are not going to use something complex, so let's try to create a new basic web application that we can use in our demo, and I can provide a name, for example, Agile Conf. My name should be unique in Azure Websites.net domain. I have to select subscription. If you have MSDN, you have access to Azure for free. If you have bespoke subscription, you can get access to Azure for free as well. We have lots of different promo codes. You can activate your trial account and so on. After that, I have to select resource group in order to manage my services, and I am going to select a free plan. In case of Azure, you can start working with many services for free at all. So in this case, I am going to use a shared hosting. I will not be able to create a domain name in this case, but it's really easy to start. I have to pay nothing in this case. So we have to wait some time for our Azure service. I forgot to pin it on my main screen, but in any case, we can find it on all resources page. And once this one. And once it's created, we can start working with this portal. So I talked about continuous integration, how to manage it. Very easy, I can use the same portal in order to set up, first of all, deployment credentials, and I can use these credentials in order to deploy my site, not just from Visual Studio. I can use FTP, I can use Git, etc. And I have to deploy, set up a deployment source. So in this case, you can see that we have integration with Visual Studio Team Service, OneDrive, GitHub, Dropbox, and you even can add your own repository. I'm not sure which source control you use, but probably your source control, even if you have something local, probably your source control integrates with Git. Yeah. So I'm not going to use GitHub. I can select local Git repository in this case. So what does it mean, local Git repository? It means that a Git repository will be installed to my hosting space. So I will have a local Git repository inside hosting space, and later I can use this local Git repository like a remote repository for my website. So it's really easy, and I can click OK, and you will see done. Yeah, so it's very easy, and after that you can open your dashboard and you can find Git clone URI inside your hosting space. So you can use this Git clone URI in order to add this Git repository to associated with your dev Git repository on your dev machine, on your servers, etc. So how to use it? Of course, in this case, you have not to use just Visual Studio. For example, you can use Eclipse. We have lots of different plugins. You can use some open source tools. For example, couple months ago, we announced the release of a new tool called Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a new tool that you can use on Mac devices, you can use on Linux devices, you can use on Windows devices as well. You even can deploy Visual Studio Code on Raspberry Pi. So yeah, it's working right now. And in case of Visual Studio Code, even Visual Studio Code integrates with Git. It's a folder-based editor, but once you open a folder, you are able to initialize Git repository directly from Visual Studio Code. So I will try to initialize a local Git repository directly from my Visual Studio Code, and probably I will try to create something simple like index.html and hello from Azure. Click save. I can set up after save, and let's commit my changes to my local Git repository. But okay, I have my changes in local Git repository, and I want to deploy my site to Azure now. How to do it? I have to open command line in order to activate my remote repository. So I can execute a command like git remote. Not sure if I remember all commands, because usually I like to use Visual Studio, but let's try. Git remote, name Azure, and my URI. So I hope it's activated, and I can push, because I already committed my changes to local Git repository, I can push all changes to my remote Git repository in Azure. Git push Azure, probably master. I have to provide password. Something happened. It's great. So I can open my Azure Management Panel, and I can open. You can see that I already have my first deployment there. So it should work. And let's try to open my website. And I have hello from Azure, and you have access to this page as well. Isn't that URI? So continuous deployment works fine, and later I will show how to use this feature in order to deploy really complex applications. Okay, let's open my presentation once again. The second important thing there are slots. Okay, I can deploy anything to my production environment, but probably it's not wisely to use just one environment, and it's not wisely to deploy anything directly to production. Probably I have to think about how to create several slots, how to create several hosting spaces in order to deploy testing environment, in order to deploy debug environment, and probably audit environment, etc. So, of course, I can create several separate services, but it's not easy because in this case it will be not easy to swap two different environments. That's why Microsoft Azure services support different staging environments. So in general, if you have just your website, and if you decide to update your website, for example, you can create a stage environment, test, debug. You can create up to 5 different environments if you want. Up to 5 different services, and deploy to this environment, to your staging environment, your code, for example, from GitHub or from Visual Studio Team Service. And once you finish all testing procedures, once you finish your review process, etc., you can easily swap production and staging environment. Just clicking a button called swap. So it's not very hard at all. In this case, you are able to set up parameters for different environments as well. So, of course, if you used your test environment, probably you did not use, you don't use production database, you use test database as well. So Microsoft Azure Panel allows you to put configuration just for test and just for production and just for debug. And once you swap, all your production configuration will be applied. So it's really easy, and you can manage it directly from Azure Panel if you want. There are several configuration settings. In this case, I used free environment. In case of free environment, you are not able to create several instances because you are using hosting shared environment. Yeah. In this case, we are not talking about separate services. So in order to use this feature, I have to change my service plan. It's really easy. So I can create a new plan and I can select my standard. I can select any pricing tier for my services. For example, you can see that in case of web applications, we have free hosting plan, shared hosting plan. We have a special shared hosting plan if you want to assign your custom domain name. If you want to have a separate server, a separate virtual machine, you can start with $32. So in my case, I'm going to use standard service plan, and let's apply it. And once I made all changes there, I can use additional features. I can easily scale up and scale out my services. I can easily change my hosting plans, etc. And if I want, I can create additional instances, additional deployment slots. So how to do it? It's really easy. I can click add slot. I can provide slot name, agile conf debug, not unique. This one works fine, and I can use the same configuration if I want. So I can click OK, and Microsoft Azure will create the second slot for my website, and I can use this slot. I have access to this slot using the same panel, using the same settings, the same features, etc. So once I have two separate slots, I can open my management panel and I can select swap button. So selecting swap button, I can select source slot and destination slot. So click OK, and what's done? And of course, I talked about configuration. In case of configurations, you have to open settings, and you have to work with properties and application settings in order to set up different configurations for production and staging deployments. So that's about slots. Next one. Resource manager. I showed just very simple scenarios. If you want to deploy a website, you can open a management panel and you can create something there. It's very easy, but in real life, you have to deploy very complex things. You have to deploy Active Directory, you have to deploy different virtual machines, different database services, and many other things. So, in general, you can do it using a management panel, but it's not easy if we are talking about DevOps. Usually, you have to delete your deployment on daily basis and create a new deployment once again and once again, and probably several deployments. And if you want to show your product to a customer, you have to deploy a similar deployment there as well. Of course, Microsoft Azure supports special management API. We announced it 3 years ago, and you can create your own products in C# in order to work with Azure and in order to manage infrastructure in Azure. But it's not really fun, yeah, especially for DevOps guys. We support PowerShell as well, and you can try to create PowerShell scripts in order to create your deployment as well. It's not funny as well. So that's why we decided to add a special functionality that we announced about 6 months ago called Azure Resource Manager API. Thanks to Azure Resource Manager API, you can easily define your configuration using just XML files. And using these XML files, you can easily deploy and recreate your existing environment several times. So you can create as many instances as you want. And of course, XML files support things like parameters, support things like different default values and variables inside, etc. In case of Resource Manager, it's better to start working in Visual Studio. So pay attention that in case of Visual Studio, you can visit visualstudio.com website, and visiting this site, you can find several products. I just presented Visual Studio Code, but 2 more products. Visual Studio Community Edition, you can download and use Visual Studio Community for free if you have less than 5 developers in your team. So this solution is very useful for startups, and Visual Studio Community supports all features of Visual Studio Professional. It's the same edition, but with a little bit different licensing agreement. And you can get access to Visual Studio Team Service. I'm going to talk about Visual Studio Team Service a little bit later. So once you have Visual Studio and once you have SDK, even if you don't like to develop in C#, you can easily create your scripts and your configuration files. So in case of Visual Studio, once you install SDK, you will be able to get access to Azure resource group templates there, and thanks to this template, you can easily select what you want to do. So you can select a basic template, and frankly speaking, Visual Studio supports lots of different templates, but in some cases it's better to start with a blank template, yeah, because you will be able to control what you are doing. And once Visual Studio create all needed files, you will be able to open Solution Explorer, you will be able to open deployment templates, and on this step, you can use JSON outline panel in order to start managing your resources. So on this step, I have nothing inside, but probably I want to create several parameters. I want to create several variables, and I want to create several resources. So in case of resources, for example, I can add a new resource, and you can see that in this case, I have access to available resources in Azure. So I can easily select anything there, and I can easily start configuration. Can easily start creating deployment for my services. And after that, you will be able to generate JSON file, and Visual Studio generates not just JSON file, but a PowerShell script that allows you to execute this JSON file. Pay attention that in some cases you have not to create this JSON file from scratch. In some cases, if you want to set up a very common solution, you can open azuremicrosoft.com and you can find you can visit, you can open resource menu item, and you can find lots of templates inside. So once we announced Azure Resource Manager, community started to create many different templates. So you can select a template, what you want with a particular configuration, and after that you will be able to execute this template even without Visual Studio. So in case of templates, you can use, of course, Visual Studio, but in general, it's a JSON file. And in order to execute a JSON file, you can use a PowerShell, just with a couple lines of code, or you can use Azure Management Panel, as I mentioned earlier. We have several templates there. And if you visit Marketplace, you can find something like resource template deployment, sorry. So selecting template deployment component in Azure, you will be able to start deploy everything that you have inside your JSON file. Just on next step, template, edit template, even just copy and paste all components directly in your browser. So you have not to install Visual Studio in this case. So the very important component in DevOps area, we have some additional DevOps features as well, but it's time probably to start talking about specific DevOps services, because we have lots of basic services, but we have several services that we develop especially for DevOps. So, which services? Today I'm going to talk just about two services. Probably it's better to start with application inside because it's not very complex compared to the second one. And in case of application inside, you can start using application inside for free. And probably it's the most popular service today because thanks to application inside, you can collect telemetry from your applications. You can use this service not just for web applications, you can use this service for mobile applications as well. And because all our services support REST API, and you can use it anywhere. But in general, you have not to use REST API directly. I don't like to use REST API at all. I like to use ready-to-use SDKs. So in case of application inside, you can find SDKs for Java, you can find, of course, SDKs for C#, for C++, etc. So if you want to use application inside in your applications, it's easy, and you can integrate it to Xamarin application, you can integrate it to web application based on Node.js, for example, etc. So it's not a very complex problem. And if we are talking about application inside, I already created a service based on application inside here. You can see that in case of application inside, once you create any web application in Azure, Microsoft Azure will automatically create application inside instance as well, and will automatically collect at least basic telemetry. You can delete it if you want, you can disable telemetry if you want, and it does not affect your account at all. So these instances are free. Of course, free instances have some limits. In case of free instances, you can collect just several thousand messages, and in case of free instances, we will delete all your messages in 24 hours. But once you want to start collecting, once you want to switch to any paid contract, you can do it very easy using management panel. But even in case free instances, you can understand how to use application inside. So in general, you can collect information. You can overview all information visiting main dashboard. Let's close not needed panels in order to see dashboard. Of course, in case of dashboard, it's something probably not very useful, because you can see a number of pods, you can open settings, and you can see some dashboards related to browsers, related to client connections, and this service integrates with several different services as well. So, for example, you can select filters on server side, and once you integrate your web application with Team Foundation service, you can even create a new work item inside Azure Management Panel, and this work item will be deployed, will be added to your database in Team Foundation service, and you can assign it, etc. But of course, in case of application inside this panel, it's not useful at all, and it's better to do two things. First of all, I already mentioned several APIs that we have, REST APIs at least, and you can use these APIs in order to put all data to application side service. But if you open a special panel called Analytics, you can find that existing dashboards is just something for beginners. But in general, we collect lots of information, and if you want, you can build your own dashboards very quickly. So in this case, we have access to a special designer that allows you to create queries, and you can see lots of different information there that collect application inside from your application, like page views, like requests, dependencies, exceptions, etc. For example, I can try to check how many requests we have in our database. I just created a website, so I don't have too many requests there, and you can see that even in browser you have access to IntelliSense system, and you can execute this query, and you can see that we have 35 requests. If we want to take some requests, we can use another command like take 10, and we can get information about existing requests there. Of course, you can import all this data, and of course, you can use API if you want in order to create your own report system. But at least on this stage, you can understand what happened with your site. You can read all information. You can even build charts there. In this case, our query not very good for charts, but in case of better queries, you can easily build it, and you can select columns that you want to display and what you want to import from your application inside database. So you can see that by default, it's just 7 columns are selected, but you can select much more columns, and you can check all this information there in application side. If you use Visual Studio, you can see that application inside is selected by default, not just for web applications, but for universal Windows platform applications and for Windows Phone applications. So Xamarin applications as well. So you will be able to use application inside in order to collect information from anywhere, almost from anywhere. Of course, if you use your own tools in order to build applications, if you use non-C#, if you use JavaScript or Java, you have to install application inside SDK, and you have to read probably a couple of pages how to implement telemetry in your application. But it's just a couple lines of code, so it's not a problem at all. Okay, let's open my presentation once again. So, as I mentioned, thanks to application insights, you can build different reports, and you should not invest your time in developing a special layer for collecting information from your application. And one more service that is very important it's Team Foundation Service, Visual Studio Team Service, as it's called right now. So in case of Visual Studio Team Service, probably already heard something about Team Foundation Server, probably already heard something about Visual Studio Online. In case of Team Foundation Service, we just made a rebranding because before it called Visual Studio Online, but we have a similar product in web that allows you to develop your web applications directly in browser. So now it called Visual Studio Team Service. And if we are talking about DevOps and if we are talking about software development lifecycle, we started to develop Team Foundation Server about probably 14 years ago. So first version of Team Foundation Server. At that time, it was just on-premise version was available, and we have 14 years experience, yeah. So we have almost everything inside Team Foundation Server, and today you can use Team Foundation Server in the cloud as well. So you have not to invest your time and money to your own infrastructure. You have not to think about how to deploy all these things. You can simply click several buttons and create your own instance of Visual Studio Team service in the cloud. How to do it? In order to do it, you can visit visualstudio.com, as I mentioned earlier, and you can find Visual Studio Team Service link there. You can see there a button, Get Started for Free. What does it mean? It means that Visual Studio Team Service is free of charge if you have less than 5 developers in your team in a particular project area. So in this case, you can create instance of Visual Studio Team Service and use it without any payments at all. Of course, if you want to use some additional features like extend number of free hours for build service or extend number of free hours for art testing, you have to pay, but in general you can use it for free. I use it for a couple of years in order to store all my code repositories, and it works fine. So you have not to deploy your own server. In case of Team Foundation Service, there is my presentation. We have everything inside. So Team Foundation Service is not a Visual Studio Team Service. It's not just a code repository. It's not just a thing for collecting your tasks and requirements. We have everything. Thanks to Visual Studio Team Service, you can start collecting requirements, user stories. You can select your process from a list, and you can even modify existing processes in order to add your own entities, in order to modify existing entities. You can select your favorite code repository between Microsoft Code Repository, Visual Studio Team Service Code Repository, and between Git. So if you want, you can use Git as well. It contains build and deploy services. It contains enough tools for automated testing and so on. So all needed components. And several months ago, we announced availability of Visual Studio Team Service Marketplace. So you can even find lots of different external components that will help you to extend your environment and probably improve software development lifecycle. So how to start working with Visual Studio Team Service? You can create instance directly from Azure Portal, because today Azure Portal integrates with Visual Studio Team Service, or you can simply visit visualstudio.com website and click Get Started for Free. In my case, of course, I already have an account in Visual Studio Team Service, and I can easily start creating a new project. Talking about new projects, we are talking not about code project, yeah? We are talking about environment that allows you to create a code repository, that allows you to create reports, to create different entities like tasks, requirements, etc. So in this case, if we are talking about particular languages, programming languages, you can use anything, of course. You can use anything, and once you start developing something, you have to select a project name and you have to select a process template. As I mentioned earlier, you can later edit your template. And now, by default, you can select between Agile, CMMI, and Scrum templates. So based on selected template, we will create all needed entities and we will create all needed components inside. And of course, let's select Agile, for example. And of course, you have to select version control. In case of version control, as I mentioned earlier, you can select between Git and between Team Foundation service. I would recommend to select Git because in case of Git, you can integrate it with anything. Yeah? For example, you can develop on your Mac and you can get access to Git code repository directly from your Mac using Visual Studio Code or using even Xcode, etc. So let's try to create Agile TFS project, and once Visual Studio created, we will be able to start planning and we will be able to create user stories and use Kanban board in order to create several iterations, etc. So let's click navigate to project. I am going to show a couple of things here. So of course it's clear that you can create many different entities there. So you can start manage your work. You can start creating different reports, but usually I like to pay attention to two different features. First one is a build process. Okay, we just discussed continuous integration. We just discussed how to deploy a website, but in complex, especially in enterprise environment, you have to spend much time in order to configure your deployment. You have lots of different components. You have not just copy and paste your code. You have run several external tools. You have run several compilers and package managers, etc. So how to do it? Several months ago, we updated our build infrastructure in Visual Studio Team Service, and thanks to this infrastructure, you are able to create your own build process. By default, you can select between Visual Studio Team Service and between Xamarin templates, but you can see several different templates. But if you want to create even a blank template, empty template, and start creating your build process from scratch. So let's select an empty build template, and on the next step, we have to provide information there to find our code. In this case, we have all code in our local Git repository against Visual Studio Team Service. But if you have own Git repository, you can easily get all code from there, even from your local build services. You can set up continuous integration directly from Visual Studio Team Service. And of course, it's better to show which tasks we support inside Visual Studio Team Service. So if you open at tasks, internet, you will be able to see lots of different components. So I don't know why, but lots of people think about, oh, Visual Studio Team Service supports .NET only and supports just Visual Studio. It's not true. Thanks to Visual Studio Team Service Build Service, you can build applications for Android, for iOS, for Windows, of course, and you can deploy your applications in different ways. So you can see that if you are talking about build services, you can select between Android, you can select between iOS build services. You can even execute some packages using Go or Grant. And you can execute some tools using utility tab, and you can, after that, of course, deployment is not all. Probably you have to execute some test cases. You have to execute all things that you usually can do automatically. And after that, in the morning, you can check if your application passed all tests and if it's ready to be published to your test environment. Because in real applications, you have to spend several hours in order to build your application, and nobody will build such application starting in the morning, because at night you will be able probably to finish building process, and you have to go home, and it's not clear when you have to develop your code. So if you're going to set up nightly builds, you can easily do it using this build process. And you can execute, as I mentioned to you earlier, different test scenarios. You can execute different unit tests, not just a unit or not just our test cases associated with .NET technologies. And of course, you can prepare packages, and you can deploy your packages to different environments, including Microsoft Azure. So if we are talking about cloud, and if we are talking about really complex deployment process, of course, I would recommend to use Team Foundation Service. It's not about programming language. It's not about even tools, because client tools. Because in this case, you can use anything. Yeah. So in order to manage Team Foundation Service, you can use a web browser. And once you create your build process, you can schedule and you can execute it. And after that, you can see all available reports, and probably you can create some tasks based on these reports. You can approve or decline results before publishing, etc. And one more thing there is a test. Is a test tab. Thanks to this tab, you can create all tests. And using this tab, creating a test, you can create just emulate number of visitors, or you can develop your own tests if you want. So using your own scenarios, because if you have very complex business logic, probably in some cases you want to test a particular functionality, etc. So of course, in case if you want to build your own tests, you have to use Visual Studio, and we have a special SDK there. It's not important which programming language you use, but in case of tests, you have to use at least C# or C++ and build all tests. And in case of basic things, if you want to emulate 1,000 users, you can do it without any coding at all. So just create a test, select number of users, and you can do it directly from this panel, or you can do it directly from application and site panel as well. We have performance test in application and site, and application and site will test your site, and you can test your site periodically and collect all telemetry information there. So in case of test, it's easy. And finally, if we are talking about not just test, but about release, you can integrate release functionality to application and site. Because I have lots of different bugs, probably I have lots of different problems, but it's not easy then these all problems are happened. it's not easy to understand when all these problems are happened. So in this case, probably it's better to put some marks inside application inside to see. Then we released a new version, and in which version we have a particular problem. And you can do it integrating release tab with application inside service. Okay. It's not easy to present this topic here because I have to be too fast. Usually I don't speak too fast, but in any case. So I'm not going to talk about particular features of Team Foundation Service because I can talk about it probably several days. But in general, just start using Team Foundation Service for free. Just start using application inside for free, and even Azure for free in order to check all features. In case of Azure, if you want to get access to Azure without credit card, just email me. I have special promo codes, and I can provide these promo codes for probably $150 that you can use in order to get access to Azure. And you should not provide any credit card, because I know that in some cases people don't like to provide credit card information, and if you click something wrong, we will charge you, of course. So we have special promo codes, and if you are a startup, you are able to register in Bespark program. In case of Bespark program, you have access to Azure for 3 years for up to $150 per month. And we can increase this amount if you have a good project based on Azure, and if you have spent enough, we can increase this amount up to several $1,000s per month. So just email me and I will provide more information about Microsoft Bespark, not just about Azure. We have not just Azure there, we have also different benefits there, including all Microsoft software. So you can use anything and you don't have any specific commitment there. You simply have own a startup, and you should not generate revenue more than $1 million. I know it's very strong requirement, probably thanks to that you will not be able to join this path. I don't know. But just the requirements, you should not use just Microsoft technologies. We don't have any other requirements. And you will be able to create up to probably 4 MSDN subscriptions if you want, and you will be able to download all tools, all software, and use Azure as well. Any questions? I have 1 minute probably. Okay, guys, I'm going to be here for probably next hour, and you will be able to ask questions if you want.
Thanks very much.